Here we go, back again with another episode of the Around the Show Sports Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Showalter, and I'm joined tonight by Brandon Mills. No Christian Hosfeld for these next couple episodes. He's studying hard, trying to get something done for his pilot's license, so we wish him luck with that. For right now, Brandon, it's me and you, man. It's our show. How we doing tonight?
Let's take it over, man. I'm doing good. Happy to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Can't complain at all. Big news broke today. We got a Derek Carr contract extension, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into that. Nice. Raiders have had a big offseason, obviously, but they locked down their quarterback with a 3-year, $125.5 million contract with a full no-trade clause. This is going to keep him in Vegas through 2025 and covers his age 32, 33, and 34 seasons. Brandon, first reaction, what are we thinking about the contract?
Congratulations.
Go get the bag, man.
Yeah,
Holy.
Man. Good shit. Raiders could still finish third or fourth in that division like we were talking earlier. I'm happy for Derek Carr. I think he's a good guy. I think the Raiders have themselves a good guy, and I think they obviously know that by paying him this much. But that division's still going to be so interesting that this deal here doesn't, automatically signify the Raiders being a better team. Yes, they locked in their quarterback. Yes, they have their guy that they believe in, but this is the toughest division in the NFL right now, and they've got to come out and win football games at the end of the day. Do I think they're going to do that? I don't know, man. It's going to be tough, but right now, just congratulations to Derek Carr. Like you said, man, go get the bag. It's huge for him.
Yeah, it's a really cool move for the Raiders, and especially for Derek Carr. I think this really validates a lot of people have been saying about him. Oh, he's a good quarterback. He deserves to be their guy long term. And I think this commitment from the team, going out and getting Devontae Adams, going out and signing a guy like Chandler Jones to bolster that defense, and then giving Derek Carr that extensions, it shows him that they're willing to bet on him, and they think he's the guy that could potentially take them to the top of this division. Because you don't agree to pay a quarterback over $40 million a year, long or short term, no matter what their age is, if you don't think that you can count on him to go and win you football games. And I think with the way that the whole division is trended, I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about what the Chiefs have done, what the Chargers have done, the Broncos obviously going out and getting Russell Wilson as well. There's been so much done in this division, and for the Raiders to go out and make this move now after they've seen how much stronger the rest of the division has gotten, saying, hey, Derek, we not only do we believe in you enough to go and get us into the playoffs last year, but we're willing to invest $40 million in you over the next 3 years, and really it's 4 years from now because this contract doesn't kick in until after next season. Yep. This is a big commitment towards Derek Carr, and I think that's going to pay dividends towards him and his confidence on the field because he no longer has to worry like, hey, they're going to trade up in the first next year. They're going to take a guy in the draft and try to replace me. This is Derek Carr's team through at least 2025 for the next 4 years, and for him, the confidence boost that has to give, that means something in the NFL. It maybe not as much in other sports, the front office showing confidence in you, but football, where it's so emotionally driven, it's impossible to measure what this could do for Derek Carr's confidence. Then I really hope that this shows in his game going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I will say in the negative light of this situation, if it doesn't go as the Raiders plan for it to go, it could look very ugly down in Las Vegas. They could be sitting there looking like they don't have a plan. But, of course, you never want to wish a negative light on the first day the guy just signed the contract. I'm happy for him. Not a Raiders fan in the slightest, but happy for Derek Carr. I think he's a good guy and a good team leader. So.
Yeah, I think if it does go wrong, I think it'll look a lot like what Minnesota's looked like the last couple of years. This is a very similar contract to the one that Kirk Cousins got, fully guaranteed, big money. I think it's a little bit less of a cap hit. I could be wrong about that. That's just off the top of my head. I know Kirk Cousins carries just an unbelievable cap hit number this year before he ended up restructuring and signing an extension there. But I mean, if any quarterback contract doesn't bow out and your quarterback doesn't play up to standards, it's going to look bad. But it's going to look especially bad when that guy is making $40.5 million a year. That'll certainly increase the worry there a little bit in terms of that. But I don't know, man. Do we think the Raiders are more likely to finish in the bottom half than the top half of this division? It's kind of hard to put them above the Chargers and the Chiefs just because of track record. The quarterbacks there are stronger, even though both of us do like Derek Carr a lot, I feel like. Just a quick gut feeling. I know we'll talk a lot more about this as football season approaches, but I want to get your pulse on that.
Yeah, personal opinion, I do think they finish in the third spot. Division is so tough, and I'm going to say it time and time again. People are probably going to get sick of hearing me say it, but the division is so tough. I think there's a very good chance they do finish in that third spot. Chargers are good and they just stacked up more great players. It would be kind of Charger-esque to see them fall off and give that second place spot to the Raiders, but right now I don't think that's going to happen, and the Chiefs are always going to be the Chiefs as long as they got Mahomes back there. So
yeah, all the teams have just gotten so much better this offseason, miles and miles better. And whether that's the Raiders have probably upgraded in terms of the actual people in the building, less than the other squads, but adding a guy like Devontae Adams who has the rapport with Derek Carr, that can't be discounted. And then finally committing to Derek Carr and allowing him to take full ownership of the franchise quarterback position in Vegas for the foreseeable future. It just pays huge dividends if all of this stuff works out. And I think, maybe they haven't brought in the caliber players that the other teams have, but they've done a lot to rectify some of the shortcomings of the front offices and the way that they've interacted with their quarterback. They brought him in some additional receiver help, which is an issue that they really, really had last year. It was very obvious. I don't know, man. I like this Raiders team a lot. I think I could see them fighting their way up into that second spot or even possibly winning the division if enough things go right. I think most likely we're going to be seeing the Raiders finish in that 3 spot. But, this team finished in second place last year. I think that the gap is a lot smaller than people might think between the Raiders and the Chargers. I think that the Chiefs are in that same tier as them. Yeah. I do feel like the Broncos are maybe a slight step below. I don't know if Russ is still the guy that we saw in Seattle. I think a lot of the adjustments that we've seen made against him in the middle of the season over the last couple of years have really taken a lot of the shine off of him. And while it's a big splashy move, I just think the rest of the rosters are better. And I mean, Raiders won 10 games last year. The Chiefs are going to be losing Tyrann Mathieu. They lost Tyreek Hill. The Chargers added some other guys as well. But I think the top 3 teams in this division are just, it's kind of like the AL East in baseball where those top 4 teams are so close. Yeah. It's kind of like a pretty good comparison for these teams.
Not going to be able to pick a team until about halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the window being close between the Raiders and the Chargers. I think the window's equal distance between every team in the division. Maybe a little bit bigger window there for the Broncos, but those top 3 teams there are neck and neck, and anything can happen. When I say the Raiders are going to finish third in that division, it's not a sorry third place.
Yeah, and I think even if the Broncos ended up winning the division, I don't think anybody would be like, "Oh my God, that's such a surprise."
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be a lot of fun going through and looking as we get closer to the season. The draft hasn't even happened yet. Who knows what these teams look like after the draft? I don't know, man. I'm excited, but we're going to go ahead and keep it with a little bit more of a time-sensitive topic, and we're going to kick it over to some NBA discussion, which we haven't had the opportunity to do a lot of on this show just because of what's been going on with the NFL offseason being so crazy and the MLB season started. We are finally going to talk a lot of basketball with this episode, and we're going to start with a little bit of an odd situation and one that's truly just not a lot of fun to talk about. We've already touched on it a little bit, and that's what's gone on with the Lakers at the end of the season, particularly the Russell Westbrook situation. Russell Westbrook came out with some comments earlier or yesterday, I believe it was. The one that stood out to me was, quote, "I just felt that I was never given a fair chance just to be who I needed to be able to help this team." That's a quote from Russell Westbrook after the season ended, where they finished outside of the play-in game, finished 11th in the West. And Brandon, I have a real tough time with these comments, and I'm somebody who doesn't like to trash players. I think that's something that anybody who listens to the podcast, anybody who knows me and who has talked to me, I always like to give players the benefit of the doubt in these situations, but it's getting really, really hard to defend Russell Westbrook at this point.
I'm sorry, I'm going to put my foot down here and say it's bullshit. When you come out and say that kind of stuff, and then you can put a 7 to 10 minute reel of one guy just throwing the ball off the backboard 100 times, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. He's saying he's not getting a fair shot. What more shot do you need? I mean, you're playing on a team with this roster. Every time I see you out on the floor, you're not performing. So it's like, are you going to blame it on your role that you're not performing? I mean, when you have a good basketball player is going to perform when he has the basketball in his hands, and he just flat out did not do that, and he's making excuses for it now, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to say that LeBron James, Rob Pelinka, Frank Vogel, those guys definitely deserve part of the blame.
Yeah.
But to say Russell Westbrook didn't have any blame, or to say that he didn't get a shot, it's ridiculous. He had no business playing the way he did. You mentioned some of the errant shots he was throwing up.
Yeah.
He's almost the reason why the season unfolded the way it did. There's bad shots, there's turnovers, the comments after a couple of games in January and February where he wasn't playing at the end of the game, trashing Frank Vogel over those. And I actually circled that in my notes for this show. On January 19th was the first time this happened, when he was benched in the fourth quarter. The team lost that night. They were 22-23 in the 7th seed. Within the week, they were in the 9th seed in the West. Yeah. And then a week after that, made more comments, and I have the quotes here. He went up to LeBron and AD after the game and said, "Oh, I wish that I could help you guys." And then I'm going to read that quote again. The quote, "I just felt that I was never given a fair chance just to be who I needed to be able to help this team." You got to take some responsibility. Like at the end of the day, he's the one throwing elbow jumpers off the top of the backboard. He's the one playing too fast and losing the basketball in key situations. He's the one that was every night, it felt like, almost was having some massive low light that was dominating social media. Yeah. It was remarkable, the ability for him to play such bad basketball in such a bombastic and loud way with these guys on his team. Like, this is one of LeBron's last shots, and you were brought in to be a big piece of a potential championship run. And obviously, this team was not going to win a championship. The roster was flawed, but they had no business finishing 11th in the West. This team is too talented. This team should have finished around 500 and been at least in the playing game, at least in that 7-10 range. Has to be. You got LeBron James, you got Anthony Davis, you got Russell Westbrook. There's no excuse. And at the end of the day, if you watch the games, it was Russell Westbrook more often than not.
Yeah, it's one of the first times I've actually felt bad for Lakers fans, because they're sitting there saying the same thing we all are. They're not being brainwashed or delusional. They said, we flat out suck this season, and they're not happy with what they're seeing. LeBron James-led team is never supposed to finish 11th in either the East or the West.
Especially when he's fighting for a scoring title. Like, LeBron was doing his job. Anthony Davis, when he was on the floor, was doing his job. It was Russ.
See, and it's I've been battling with this with myself, because at one end I look at, like, damn, Bron balled out. He did everything he could. But at the same time, he kind of, in my humble opinion, and I don't really know shit, but he kind of handpicked this team,
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of, like, you pick this team and then you had to do it all yourself. Well, maybe you're not very good at picking a team as you are at playing basketball. I don't know. But it's been hard for me to see how much blame I want to cast on LeBron in this situation, because he did back up the poor team season with a very good personal season. Yeah,
and you mentioned, like, the shortcomings of the front office, and LeBron is absolutely a part of those decisions that are made. Apparently, LeBron talked the front office out of trading for Buddy Hield, and instead they elected to trade for Russell Westbrook.
Questionable.
Hindsight's 2020. Obviously, that's just a report, and we don't know that. But that is a tough pill to swallow. Buddy Hield, in terms of the fit with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, just makes a lot more sense with Russell Westbrook. And sure, you can blame it on something like that as to why the season didn't go to plan. But at the end of the day, I just think back to the fact that a team with these three players, Russell Westbrook's, up until this season, he has his flaws, but he's been a good basketball player. He's a guy who's played on good basketball teams.
MVP seasons.
The Wizards weren't bad with him on the team last year because of him. They were just a bad basketball team. This year was different. The Lakers, if you replace Russell Westbrook with Buddy Hield, are going to be in the playoffs. You can't convince me otherwise.
A lot of players you could replace him with.
Yeah, it's been the one time in Russ's career where I can't come to his defense at all. He really did play himself into the hole, and then to come out and make these comments and say that you didn't get a chance, that LeBron and Anthony Davis, when they were vouching for you to the media, didn't mean it, which is another bullshit comment that he made. I don't want to say I lost a lot of respect for the guy, because he's done so much great in his career on and off the basketball court, but this is definitely one of the more disappointing moments in Russell Westbrook's career,
for sure.
At least for me. It's tough for me to go ahead and swallow and just kind of get past this one, but we're going to have to do our best, and there's definitely no chance he's on the team next year. So one thing we're looking at after the finals end is definitely going to be where Russell Westbrook ends up and how the Lakers go forward with replacing his minutes next year, because that's a big hole. That's a lot of minutes you got to fill.
I'm curious to see how many people are going to get shipped out of LA this season. I think they're going to do that whole ship them out.
Yeah,
keep LeBron and try it over again for his last few.
It's getting interesting, man. The Lakers just don't have a lot left to give away, so it's going to be interesting to see who they can bring in, what moves they can really make.
It's sad to see.
We're going to go ahead and move over to some actual playoff teams. It's a playoff game to talk about the first round series in the NBA playoffs that we're most looking forward to watching. And Brandon, I'll go ahead and be a gentleman and let you go ahead and go with yours first.
I am most interested in this Nuggets versus Warriors matchup, mainly because I don't know who's going to come out on top in it, and also because I've always liked who the Warriors are when they come out in the playoffs. You know, no matter who they put on the floor, they're a different team in the playoffs. You know, something different's in the air, and I'm just excited to see, you know, what this series has to offer. You got two great teams, and it's not going to be a walk in the park for the Warriors, but I hope they pull it out for our boy.
For Cam, absolutely. It's definitely going to be an interesting series. I think those teams are so different, being the way that Nikola Jokic plays versus the way that Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole, who's emerged for the Warriors, and those guys, definitely very different styles of play, and I'm curious to see which side comes out on top. The Nuggets have another really interesting player, Michael Porter Jr., who's a really athletic wing, a good shooter. A lot of talent on both sides.
Kind of a hit and miss guy, though. You don't know who you're going to get.
Absolutely, versus the tried and true guys in the Warriors. I'll definitely be tuning in for that one. For me, I think the first round series I'm most looking forward to has got to be Nets Celtics.
That's a good one.
I think the Nets have been the team this year that when all these teams that are high seed saw them down there, they're saying, please don't match up with us in the first round. You imagine being a 1 seed and going having to face the Nets, man. It's just so brutal. KD, we know what he's going to do in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year in those Eastern Conference Finals against Giannis, 35.4, 10.6, and 5.4. That's points, rebounds, and assists. He had a 49 and a 48-point game. That 48-point game coming in a deciding Game 7 that they fell. And then Kyrie last night in the play-in game dropped 34 and 12 while he was fasting for Ramadan, which is just absolutely absurd.
Insane.
No food, no water, playing a 2.5-hour basketball game and going out there and dominating the Cleveland Cavaliers. And on the other side, I really don't think there's been a team hotter in the entire NBA than the Boston Celtics. This team was a 9th seed as early as January, and they just finished tied in the 2nd seed with the Milwaukee Bucks, who are led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, obviously. From January 28th on, this team went 26-6. That's by far the best mark in the NBA.
That's remarkable.
And I think it's going to be the interesting part about this matchup is it's the team that nobody wants to play versus the team who is the hottest out of all the teams in the NBA. And we get to see those guys clash early on in the first round. Is it going to be the tried and true guys and Kyrie and KD who have had playoff success, who know what it takes to win in the playoffs? Or is it finally going to be the year this Celtics team led by guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown finally break through and beat that team that has those big superstars? You go back to thinking about when they lost in 7 games to LeBron and the Cleveland Cavaliers in his last year in Cleveland. They haven't really been able to get past that team with the big superstar in the playoffs yet. And I think for the development of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics organization and what they want to do going forward with these guys, this is a series that you absolutely have to win to start to build that confidence. Like, hey, we can go in and take on these guys who have these awe-inspiring, world-beating reputations, guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, finals MVPs, guy who has made the game-winning shot in the finals, and Kyrie Irving as well. You got to go out and beat those guys, and doing so would be a huge boost for this organization going forward, and it could propel them to being potentially NBA champions. They certainly have the ceiling to do that, but the Nets do too, man. I'm definitely going to be watching every single game in this series. It's hard to watch all of the games with playoff basketball because there's just so much, but this is one that you circle, and you got to get in front of a TV for every single game.
Yeah, and it sucks because one of these teams has to lose. You know, you kind of want to see these guys excel past the first round. It was my wish that the Nets would have to come in and play the Sixers, because that would be must-watch television.
Especially if they get Ben back.
Whether you're into soap operas or sports, you know, you're watching something fun on TV there. Yeah, and I think it's funny because the Celtics, they always get kind of hot towards the end like this. You know, they start kind of under the radar. No one's really paying attention to them, and then out of nowhere they just explode, and they have this huge record or streak coming into the playoffs, and I think it's perfect for them, but you know, the Nets are the perfect team to stop them in their tracks right then and there. So we'll see. But like you said, must-watch TV.
And there's obviously a lot of really good series. Another one that I'm looking forward to is going to be the Bucks and the Bulls, just because we get to watch Giannis in that one.
Yeah.
And then the Eastern Conference, for the first time in a really long time, feels like
that's the conference.
Much superior conference.
Yeah.
Not just slightly better, but the East this year is just so loaded. You could have picked almost any series out of these Eastern Conference finals. And we don't even know fully, this is being recorded during the second day of play-in games. So we don't know 100% what these playoffs are going to look like. But just based on what we're looking at right now, I think these are definitely both the Nuggets, Warriors, and Nets Celtics are two series that a lot of people are going to have circled on their calendars and got to get in front of the TV to watch. So today we got a new report from ESPN's Kevin Arnovitz about James Harden and Kevin Durant's beef when they were teammates back in Brooklyn this season before James Harden was shipped over to Philadelphia. And this report's got me scratching my head a little bit over just what's going on in James Harden's head. You have the opportunity to go over and team up with Kevin Durant, one of the best basketball players to ever play the game, and Kyrie Irving, who can score just about as good as anybody in the game. Yeah. Also a great passer, just a great basketball player. The opportunity to go team up with them. And apparently, according to this report, Kevin Durant was so astonished by James Harden's weight gain that he, quote, attributed his lack of explosiveness and his sluggish play, end quote, to James Harden's weight gain. And again, another quote from the article, quote, he attributed all of this in large part to Harden being out of shape as he did the ensuing hamstring issues, end quote. So Kevin Durant putting a lot of weight into James Harden's weight gain, no pun intended there. And it's very disheartening to hear about this pairing that we all thought was going to be so successful and we were all so excited for. I know I was jumping for joy when I saw they were getting James Harden. You know, it does suck to see that this is the reason why these two guys didn't work out together and why he's ultimately in Philadelphia now, and how much this changed what could have been the power structure in the NBA. You know, if the Brooklyn Nets have a healthy James Harden with those guys, and he didn't have that slow start to the season, who knows what Brooklyn could have finished a top 4 seed in the East if they had him all year, if he just didn't play so poorly in the beginning of the year that, you know, they're in this position. And you can also go back and blame Kyrie Irving, and you could talk about the whole vaccine thing, how he wasn't able to play, and he was a part-time player, and that obviously largely contributed to where they are this season as well. But I don't know, man. This is a tough one for me to swallow personally as a guy who likes James Harden and likes to watch him succeed, as I do with all these guys. Watching a guy shoot himself in the foot over something like this, that you know, if you're watching the games, you can see something's going on. It's tough.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show you that super teams don't always work out the way you think they're gonna when you first see it. When I first saw Harden was going to Brooklyn, I was like, they're winning the championship. There's no question about it. And then you kind of see how things unfold. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I thought they were boys, you know. I thought they were excited to come back and play with each other, and that relationship was, no pun intended, just kind of a rebound. It's just kind of a bad look. I don't really know what to think of it all right now. It's hard to put into words, but it's a bad look for Harden. KD, arguably the best ball player in the world right now. If you got the chance to go out and win a championship with him, you'd do it. But he's got himself a nice situation in Philly, and he's not with a lack of talent over there. So.
Yeah, if I'm a Sixers fan, though, this report definitely has me feeling uneasy. If he's unwilling to get into shape and do the things necessary to where he's in basketball shape coming into the season, where you're on a team with championship aspirations in Brooklyn, why would you expect him to be able to do that in Philadelphia when he's paired up with Joel Embiid? You gave up a lot to get this guy. You gave up Seth Curry and Ben Simmons, who was never going to play another minute for the 76ers again. But still, you're giving away a lot of talent there. Seth Curry was a huge contributor to their team. And to get a guy back that's, not doing the things that are necessary for him to be successful in the league, it doesn't give you a lot of confidence that he's going to just suddenly change and do this going forward, because he had these same issues in Houston before he ever had them in Brooklyn. We've seen, and I hate to make comments about people's weight and stuff like that, but we've seen James Harden's weight fluctuate greatly throughout the season, especially coming into seasons, generally showing up a little bit heavy, and that's all good and fine. But once it starts to affect your play like it is now, or like it was in the beginning of the season, certainly, because he started the season in a way that we haven't seen him play ever in his NBA career, that's definitely concerning, especially as a fan where you have championship aspirations in the Philadelphia 76ers. You want those guys to come in and be taking things seriously in the offseason, so when they come in, shit's ready to go, and you got it on lock and you're ready to go.
Exactly.
It just doesn't feel like James Harden is committed to doing the things that are necessary. And also, I think from the Brooklyn side, I think they did a good job of,
scoping that out,
realizing what's going on, cutting off the cancerous part of the organization, and moving on. They got two good pieces back with Ben Simmons and Seth Curry. They absolutely won the trade, just for the fact that Kevin Durant and James Harden were beefing. They weren't going to play together on the floor, and they got anything back for him. You think about the situation with Russell Westbrook, the Lakers couldn't have got anything back. They got a potential reclamation project in Ben Simmons that could pay dividends for the next decade, and they got Seth Curry, who could be a contributor on any championship team in the NBA right now. I don't know, man. It's just a difficult situation, and it doesn't reflect on James Harden well at all.
No, And it does suck to see because I like Harden too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sour things going on in the NBA. Stay tuned to see what happens.
Well, we'll certainly be watching a lot of playoff basketball coming up. Can't wait to watch the play-in games once we head out of here, out of the studio. But that's going to wrap our show up for tonight. As we always say, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for letting us in your home tonight. And we will see you guys next week.
See you guys. Thanks.